Thank you for joining us today for our seminar in the Journey to Science series at Onondaga Community College. This seminar is sponsored by the Bridges to Baccalaureate grant. Today, we are welcoming a very special seminar speaker, Raven Baxter, also known as Raven the Science Maven. Raven is a molecular scientist, educator, and the queen of science rap. Raven speaks internationally to teachers, students, and others about the importance of innovation and diversity in science education. OCC President Casey Crable kindly shared some words with us to welcome Raven, and I will read her words. I am excited that we are hosting Raven the Science Maven for part of our consideration of journeys to and through science. Raven, you need to know that OCC students are amazing, and we can't wait to see how they put their talents to work. We're grateful that you were able to spend some time with our students today so that they can benefit from your perspective and experience, your journey, if you will. Thank you so much for being part of our day. Thank you for your kind words, President Crable. As you're watching, if you have any questions at all, there's a question and answer button at the top, and you can submit your questions at any time during the talk. And at the end, we'll be sure to have Raven answer some of those questions. Raven, thank you very much for sharing your time and your story with us. Let's welcome Raven.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to my seminar today. I'm very grateful to be here. Your institution reached out to me last summer, I believe it was quite some time ago, and I was very excited about speaking at a SUNY institution. As you all may know, I am a SUNY graduate. I've attended Erie Community College, ECC, Buffalo State College, and now I'm graduating from the University at Buffalo. So I'm very happy to be speaking here today, especially because I've also taught at a community college. So I have a really deep felt appreciation for not just the students at community colleges, but also the hardworking faculty that often make community college experiences memorable and worthwhile for our students, and that makes the entire experience just a really great place to live, learn, and work. So thank you for having me here today. Thank you to your president for offering those very welcoming words. And I'm here to talk about my journey in STEM as a scientist, as an educator, and now as a science communicator, and other things. I wear many hats, which I'm proud to wear, but also emphasize the impact of my experiences in the community college setting, in my trajectory as a professional as a whole. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer questions at the end, and I'll just get started. So again, my name is Raven Baxter. I am a molecular biologist and a science communicator, which is somebody who makes scientific information fun and engaging for the public, and somebody who creates community around science for the public. And I am also finishing a doctorate in science education with a focus on curriculum instruction and the science of learning from University at Buffalo. My journey has mainly been in Buffalo. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. So go Bills, whoop, whoop. You all are Bills fans by default when you're not rooting for the Syracuse Orange, I'm guessing. But yeah, I am from Buffalo. I am somebody who considers himself a lifelong scientist, meaning my journey as a scientist really started from birth, I would say. I can't, when people usually ask me this question of where did your STEM journey begin, I can't really focus to a particular point when that was the case. I just seemed like I was always interested in science, which I'm grateful for having that early introduction to the field. I was in the grass, digging up worms, looking in trees. I was looking at the sky, trying to find a telescope, and eventually it just came to be that I had read just about every science book that was in my school's library. And I wanted to do more. You know, it just seemed like there were never-ending questions to answer, and I was dead set on answering them all if I could, or if not, just really enjoy losing myself in the scientific inquiry process. And so eventually I went to space camp, and space camp is in Huntsville, Alabama. It's like a sleepaway camp. They have programs for people of different ages from, I think maybe even elementary, perhaps, up to adults. I think there's even a space camp program for teachers, which is something that maybe one of you all might be interested in pursuing. But I went to space camp as a preteen, and actually it might have been 9 years old. So, really just a kid, honestly. I wouldn't necessarily call it preteen. And I was in junior astronaut training. Basically, they host you at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center for a week, and they teach you how to conduct space missions, how to conduct space flights, space walks, and what the essence of space travel is, and space exploration, and like planetary exploration. And I always just joke that this was such a formative time for me, because in that week, even though it was just a week, I learned so much about myself and what I wanted for myself as a scientist. I learned that I like to be fun, I like to be entertaining, I like to lift the mood in science. For example, when we were conducting a mock Apollo 11 mission inside of an actual rocket ship, and with an actual mission control center, I was in charge of the countdown. And so everybody's stationed, everybody's playing their roles in this reenactment of Apollo 11. There's, we got kids in the space shuttle. They're making, I think we were actually making slime at that point. This was way before slime was a thing. Maybe it's always been a thing, but y'all know what I mean. Kids in the rocket making slime, conducting their space experiments. We had people in mission control, people who were in charge of monitoring the engineering and the everything, right? It was a real reenactment. And so we are counting down to launch, and we were taking it very seriously. We were acting very seriously. It was dead quiet in mission control. I was responsible for the countdown. And so as I'm counting down, from 60, 59, 58, 57, I suddenly decided that it would be the perfect time to tell a joke. And I let everybody know that I had saved 15% of my car insurance by switching to Geico. And so that was my kind of way of understanding that I love what I'm doing. I love being a scientist, but I also think there's room for a little personality in here. And I just saw myself playing that role very early on. And I also learned I was afraid of heights at space camp. So obviously, being an astronaut and having a career in space, in actual space, was not the best move for me. So there was a lot to be learned that week. And so both of those instances really influenced my path down the way, where I eventually focused in on the Earth itself and went to SUNY ESF, actually, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, because it's also in Syracuse. I went to SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry for my freshman year of college, and majored in environmental science, because once I kind of strayed away from wanting to explore space, I focused back down to Earth and solving some of the greatest issues that are present here on our planet, and wanting to create laws and policies that protect Earth and preserve it for future generations. So I went to ESF, amazing school, highly recommend for anyone who would like to transfer out after attending community college or is interested in other opportunities. It was very cool. And I actually didn't do very well, though, because I graduated early from high school. So I actually attended college when I was 16 years old, which is not the youngest that anybody's ever went to college, but it was also just young enough so that I didn't quite have a grasp on my maturity and my academic skills, My social skills, I was still finding myself. I was very social, but I didn't really quite have the discipline to say, I'm going to be social during these hours of the day, and then I'm going to be focused on my academics during these other parts of the day. I really didn't have much of a sense over that at that point in time. So I ended up leaving. Really, I was kicked out, honestly. You all know how this goes. I was placed on academic probation because my GPA was under a 1.0, which was, I laugh about it now, but it was a really hard time for me because I couldn't figure out at the time how I had graduated from high school as such a gifted and talented person. I literally graduated out of a gifted and talented program, and then failed out of college my freshman year. I just was shocked, right? But I knew that I had a lot of work to be done. I had to say goodbye to all my awesome friends that I met at SUNY ESF and chugged it on back home to Buffalo, where I guess what I did? I attended a community college. And I had never considered attending a community college when I was in high school. It had never crossed my mind. I didn't think that I would ever have to pursue an option of going to a community college, but here I was at Erie Community College trying to get my feet back on the ground and really continue working hard on my academics because I really did love school. Like, I come from a very educated family, so it, because of the way that I was raised and the environment that I was in, not finishing school wasn't an option that I saw as one that I would pursue. So I decided to finish out at Erie Community College, or at least try to get my grades up to a place where I could go and transfer out to a four-year school. What I had known about community colleges prior to me actually attending one were things that I had heard from my friends in high school. Things about, well, the conversations would look like, oh, well, what college are you going to, our senior year, or like towards the end of our junior year, what college are you going to, or what are your plans? And very rarely would I ever hear somebody say, oh, I want to go to a community college. Usually there was this negative stereotype that was placed on the desire to go to a community college, or the desire to save money by attending locally at a community college. And people placed certain characteristics on people that wanted to go to community colleges, saying like, oh, they don't work hard, or they don't this, or they don't that, or they're this. And it usually wasn't amazing. They weren't amazing things that were being said. And those are the things that I was hearing about community colleges. I didn't believe any of those things, but I was very aware of what other people were saying about community college. However, when I attended, I had probably one of the best experiences of my life. I feel like I was very fortunate to have been at ECC because it was a very diverse environment. As you all know, Buffalo is home to many different communities, including a significant refugee population. So people who are coming from all over the world to make their home in America and establish communities here. So, and not only were my classes ethnically diverse at ECC, they were also diverse in age, diverse in like the gender spectrum, diverse in socioeconomic levels, people, different occupations. Some people were full-time students, some people were grandmothers, full-time grandmothers, taking care of their babies and trying to get some school in as well, nursing students, dental students, people who had plans to just transfer out after 2 years and go to a 4-year certificate program people. It was really quite diverse. And I think a lot of people, when they hear diversity, they often go to just, oh, skin color, like ethnicity, but it really is so much deeper than that. There's so much value in all of the different parts of our identities that go beyond just what we look like and what part of the world we're from. So I really grew to appreciate that as a student at a community college. And I also want to say that although not every single one of my professors was amazing, I did have some of the best teachers that I've ever had at the community college level. And I noticed that, the people who were coming to teach were often those who were working multiple jobs. And for some of those people, they were doing it because they really enjoy teaching and they didn't necessarily need the income of working at the community college or being an adjunct, but they truly wanted just another opportunity to be in the classroom, to engage with students, or people who do take on a lot of commitments because they do enjoy teaching and they might actually need the opportunity financially as well, but like also were extremely passionate about what they do and truly wanted to provide a presence and representation in the classroom. And so I, in addition to being able to get my grades up and transfer out to Buffalo State, which I eventually did, I also learned a lot about myself and what I value as a student in my learning experiences and in my learning environments. I really learned to value diversity and understood what diversity means outside of the spectrum of, as I said before, ethnicity, race, skin color, all of that some of the superficial things that we kind of default to, and really understanding what rich diversity means. And so I kind of kept that at the back of my head for a long time. I left the community college. I went on to go to Buffalo State, and I majored in biology, and wasn't quite sure what I was doing in biology, because biology is a bit different from environmental science in that it just strictly focuses on life science, but it was still fascinating to me. And eventually I took genetics, which was a required course in the program, and fell in love with molecules and just the idea that, the fact that all living things are operating on DNA, which is a code, it's a language that we all have in common that unites all living things, from people to plants to frogs to flowers. I already said plants. Every living thing, basically. And it was fascinating to me. And I also realized that although I was learning something that really was applicable to every living thing, that only a select few of the people that I was friends with were in my classes, and that my friends who were business majors weren't having this amazing opportunity to learn about themselves and their bodies and how humans work. They were off taking other classes, and I wanted to share everything that I was learning with them. So I locked that in the back of my head as well. My desire to communicate science and really share with everyone from every discipline some of these amazing things that I was learning. I graduated on the dean's list. I had a 4.0 when I graduated college. So I pat myself on the back because I went from having like a 0.7 GPA my freshman year, a lost 16-year-old, to graduating college on the dean's list with amazing letters of recommendation from my professors who had seen how hard I worked, because it actually was not an easy transition from a community college to a four-year institution. If I can think about my transcript, I transferred during into my junior year. My junior year, my transcript really looks like alphabet soup, meaning I had A's, B's, C's, withdrew from some. I failed some classes. I had to do a pass-fail for some classes. I mean, truly, it looks like alphabet soup. You probably wouldn't even recognize it as a transcript. But I ultimately graduated with straight A's, taking all upper level biology courses on the dean's list. and I'm forever proud of myself for that. It is one of the, it's just the hardest thing that I've worked for, is what I want to say, and really solidified my desire to continue on in the field. And so I did. I was a little confused at the time still, because even though I had worked so hard to get my grades on track, I was working so hard to get my grades together in college that I didn't quite do enough career exploration, so that I could understand what exactly I was working for. Because I was all about the numbers. Like, I had known that I needed to grow, I needed to improve, and I thought that what that all that meant was get my grades up, so that I can, make this achievement and get on the dean's list. That was like all that was in my head. But then I finished college and I'm like, I don't even really know what was I working so hard for, because I don't know what am I doing after this. Like, I really had no idea what I was going to be doing. And so I attempted to try for medical school. I think I had taken a couple of courses during my undergraduate program that would be prerequisites for medical school. I didn't quite finish the prerequisites out, and since all of my friends were attending or trying to attend medical school, I figured, okay, well, why not me? So I tried to do a post-baccalaureate program after I graduated from college. It didn't quite work out because my heart wasn't in the desire to go to medical school, and I wasn't willing to work that hard at physics specifically to get there. I had some roadblocks there. I did great in organic chemistry, believe it or not, even though all of my exams are like all crinkly because I've cried over all of them. But I did great in organic chemistry. I did great in calculus. It was something about that physics. I think if I maybe had a little bit of a more engaging and flexible professor, I might have had a different experience. But you know what? Ultimately, my heart still wasn't in pushing for medical school. So I contacted my advisors that I was close to in my undergrad program, and I let them know, like, hey, I'm a little lost. I'm at this post-bac program. It's not for me. What should I do? And they just said, just pack your stuff up, come back home. The post-bac program was in Philadelphia, and they're like, pack your stuff up, come back home. We're gonna get you into our master's program. Like, don't worry about it. Everybody had been rooting for me, but ultimately it just didn't work out at the post-bac. So I attended a master's program and specialized in molecular biology. My thesis was on a protein folding thesis on the evolution of proteins, specifically protein folding chaperones. And after that, I decided that I really loved research. I was kind of getting back to my roots of, as I shared with you all before, scientific inquiry, and really loving, just loving the opportunity to ask questions every day. So I went into a research career as a cancer research scientist. Amazing opportunity. And I worked at a drug discovery laboratory, and I was doing contract research, which what that work looks like is big pharma companies like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and all those people have big projects going on all the time. And a lot of the research and the work that they do in those projects is done in-house by them, but sometimes they outsource certain portions of their research. Maybe it's because other labs have different tools that they need, or the personnel, the expertise that they need, or maybe it's cheaper, who knows? They outsource portions of their work to contract research organizations on a contract basis, and it's the responsibility of the contracted organization to provide whatever deliverables the big pharma company wants. So I was doing that work, and it was very exciting because every month, every few weeks, I was working on a new contract. And I'm very fortunate to have worked in a place that was like very state of the art. We had some machines in there that you can't really find anywhere else. And so I was doing very unique work and also a broad spectrum of work in molecular biology. So I wasn't just doing the same thing over and over again. I was really exercising all these different parts of my science brain that I had developed over the years to do my job there. But something happened here in this job that really influenced my journey in STEM to where I am today and how I am today. And that was that I was feeling very lonely in my scientific experience, like as a professional. I feel like my journey was very different from my journey as a student. As a student, I felt very welcome. I felt like I belonged 100%. I never felt like I didn't belong. As a scientist, I never felt like people were questioning my abilities. I never felt like I was being ignored. I always felt visible. I know that that's a unique experience to me. And I feel privileged to have that experience. I recognize that's not an experience everybody has, but for me, that's how I felt. And I was very happy in that. That's where my foundation was and my confidence was as a scientist. I was very proud of what I had accomplished. However, things were so bad at my job that one day I had a coworker who literally came up to me. I am a Black woman, and so I was the only Black person who worked at the job at the time. When they hired another Black person to work at the job, one of my coworkers turned to me and said, "Well, you should be happy you're not the token Black anymore." And that really shook me to my core, because no one had ever said anything like that to me, literally in any space that I'd ever been in. I was not socially prepared to handle that type of comment and bias, right? And it really did hurt my feelings, because I kind of felt, developed a little bit of an imposter syndrome, where I felt like, if she believes this, that I'm a token here and that I don't actually belong here, and that I'm just here for optics, or I'm just here for, I'm not here because people think I earned my way to be here and I'm here to fill a quota. Like, I have all of these things running in the back of my head. And, on top of that, I was feeling every day, even before this comment was made to me, that I was being ignored. I did feel like I was being excluded. Like, people weren't socializing with me, and I don't have the information about why other people didn't feel like they could engage with me, but I made every attempt, to bring inclusivity into the workplace, and it just wasn't happening. It wasn't happening naturally, and there also weren't really any company initiatives that supported bringing in marginalized people into the workplace and protecting marginalized people and providing that training for other people to understand how to keep diversity in the workplace. And so ultimately, all of those things kind of, they accumulated and impacted my decision to leave. I left the job because I had to put myself first and remind myself that my mental health is an important, it's an important thing, that even though I had worked so hard to obtain that position, I truly wanted to be in a place where different cultures, different values are appreciated, where there's just space, there's space for everybody, right? And where nobody really feels like that they don't deserve to be in the space that they rightfully are in. So tying back to my experience at the community college as a student, there was an opportunity for me to teach different biology courses at ECC, at a community college. And I jumped at the opportunity because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is right on time. It came up right during my decision to leave the corporate scientific space. And I said, well, I had an amazing experience as a student, and I know that this is a place where we have diversity. Like, I would love to be able to come in and share my love and joy and passion for science with this diverse population and really find ways to make them feel like they belong in science. Because the incident that I had just described to you that happened at the previous job, where I was basically racially harassed, I guess you could call it. Once I started telling other people about my experience, I realized that I was not the only person that has happened to. There are people all around the world who are signaling to others that they don't belong in the very spaces that they've earned the right to be in. And this is particularly happening a lot in the science spaces and STEM spaces. So it was important for me to understand that coming in as a community college instructor, what I needed to understand about my role as an instructor and how to properly appreciate the diversity that I have in my classroom. And so I definitely would like to, before I stop for questions, I want to share some of the things that I feel like made my teaching experience as a community college professor not only extremely rewarding for myself, but also I believe, also based on my student evaluations, that my students greatly benefited from my approaches in the classroom and some of the values that I emphasized in my teaching and the ways that I was teaching. So let's see. The first thing that I would like to share is that I really have to do a metacognitive approach to the whole academic institution as a whole. Everything is very rigid, very structured, right? As soon as students come in the door, we have a curriculum for them. We say, you're going to take these classes during these semesters. At this time, we're going to give you this degree. The degree is going to be called this, and you're going to pay this much for it, and you're going to take the classes at this time. Everything is very, outlined. We give them a syllabus when we walk in, and that is amazing. We love structure. Structure helps everything operate smoothly. I'm an advocate for structure and order, absolutely. However, there is kind of a downside to too much structure and confining our students to systems that they didn't invent, if you know what I'm saying. And I'll talk more about this. One of the things that I emphasize in my classroom is creative freedom. So I was teaching human biology, I was teaching microbiology, and I was teaching a few other courses that I am a little sleep deprived from writing my dissertation, but I taught other classes as well. And general biology, that's the other one. And in all three of those classes, I did have quite a standard approach to most of my classroom structure, being that we had lectures, we had labs. During the lectures, they quite often were PowerPoints, but sometimes they weren't, and I'll talk more about that later. I gave exams, but my exams were coupled with creative assignments. And so, for example, I feel like one of the greatest opportunities for my students, and this is something that they expressed to me as well, was our final project, where I would task them with using their creativity, literally anything that they considered to be creative, to express a topic that they really loved during the semester. And so what this looked like, long story short, was at the end of the semester, I gave a final exam. It looked like a final exam that you would expect in a science course, but it was coupled with a creative assignment. So students produced board games. I remember someone produced a board game in my human biology class called Poops and Shoots, and it was about the digestive tract. It was a play on Chutes and Ladders, and it was a fact-based game that the student had made to teach about the digestive system. And they actually made the cards, they made the board, we sat together, we played it during class. I had a student who gave a spoken word poem about closed and open circulatory systems. And, you know, we dimmed the lights in the classroom, we lit candles, we're all sitting around listening to this person basically spill their heart out, no pun intended, in the form of a love story, but she was also teaching us about the different types of circulatory systems. And then I guess there's so many. There were songs, skits, music videos, a 3D animation. Someone made a 3D animation of a bacteriophage, a T4 bacteriophage landing on a bacteria and injecting viral material. So it was very cool, and I could tell that the students were having an amazing time. Like it was rewarding for me because I was blown away by the creativity, but also what many of the students expressed was that they had never had this type of academic freedom in their journey, and that even though for many of the students, the classes that they were taking with me weren't necessarily even a part of their major, they felt like they were more inclined towards the sciences based on their experience in my classroom, and that they quite often just express that they wish they had more of these opportunities to express themselves and their identities in the classroom. And so with every opportunity I have to teach, I am always focused on making sure that students have that experience and opportunity to express their unique selves. And even as simple as at the beginning of the very first class of the semester, I oftentimes don't teach during the first class. Even if I have 60 to 100 students in a class, I will always take the time to give everyone an opportunity to speak about themselves and share a little part of their story, even if it's a large class, even if it's just 5 seconds, 30 seconds of somebody just talking about themselves and sharing things that are important to them, things that they want their peers to know, has made such a huge difference in my classroom engagement levels, my students' desire to work hard, their work ethic, and their just sense of connectedness in the classroom. And ultimately, I do see greater learning outcomes and performance when I do take that great care. You know, there have been some semesters where I was going through a lot of things and I couldn't really dedicate that very intentional attention to my work. And I've noticed a dip, you know, in engagement. And I notice what happens when I don't put that effort in and how important it is. And then I do want to leave on the note that every time I have really intentionally crafted these special learning engagements focused on the student and our students' identities and their diversity that they bring to the table, at the end of the semester in my student reviews, I always see 1 or 2 students make this comment that they feel like we're a big family. And I think that is very beautiful. It definitely highlights what I think science can be, what science should be, because we're all really in this together. Really what education as a whole can be and what it should be, because us, you know, as students, as educators, we all are in this education system together. I feel like, as corny as this does sound, we should find more ways to emphasize that we can exist together, maybe even feel like we're a family sometimes, but those types of bonds are really important. So that's all I would like to share today. I really enjoyed sharing my community college experience with you all. This is something that I very rarely get to talk about. So I'm really pleased to have been invited here today to speak on this, and I'm welcoming any questions at all from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Raven. We certainly are very passionate about the community college experience, and I didn't actually know before today that you went to community college. So That makes me especially happy. Now,
Yeah.
we have a question, and the question is, you mentioned your struggle going into college after high school, and maybe some of that was your age, but what lessons do you feel you learned about how to study or how to learn that high school maybe didn't teach you? And how did you learn to study? Many students leave high school as top A students, and as you, struggled in their first college science class.
So I think that I have a really unique case. I actually was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 7. And I largely went unmedicated throughout my entire K-12 experience. And I think that a big part of me personally, why I was able to succeed, was me having access to disability services. I didn't know that I needed disability services because there was such a stigma at the time that I was in school around accessing that office. And I realized after I failed out of college that not only do I need to access disabilities services, I need to access a tutoring center. I need to access the writing center. I need to talk to my advisor. A light bulb went off in my head and I was like, oh my goodness, there are offices on campus where people literally get paid to make sure that I don't fail out of school. I didn't realize that because during my freshman year, I truly did feel alone. Like it just didn't click. It didn't click to me that there were all of these resources available, even though I had went through 2 separate student orientations. Like, I don't know. But I definitely will summarize and say my awareness of student offices on campus 100% changed my trajectory.
I feel like that should be our new tagline. Come see all these offices that will help you not fail out of college. We'll credit you for that. Now, another question, and this goes more into sort of where you're headed in the future. Now, as a successful science communicator and educator, if you were given free reign over science education in a large urban K-12 school district such as Buffalo or Syracuse, what are some changes that you would make? What would you implement? I know that's a big question.
Oh, there's so many things, right? I feel like if we asked everybody in this call what we would change about the K-12 system, all of our computers would just simultaneously explode and like combust. Just by pure brain power of thought. But so I didn't include this in my story. As I shared at the very beginning, I've worn many hats. I've actually been a teacher in K-12. I started out as a substitute teacher. I substitute taught all throughout my master's program. And I also formally taught as a chemistry teacher, Regents chemistry. Don't ask me how I got in that position, but I was at a charter school and I was teaching Regents chemistry to 11th and 12th graders. So, and that was in Buffalo Public Schools, smack in the middle of the city. So to answer your question, I do believe that we need to hire Black teachers, right? That is one of the things that I think, from what I've seen, is so interesting, that our student population and our teacher populations, from my experience, have never matched. It's always been disproportionate, where I was working in a 96% Black population school, but the teachers were 96% white. So although they were amazing people with the greatest intentions, there sometimes was a bit of a cultural divide. Sometimes the students didn't necessarily feel like they could relate to their instructor in some cases, or sometimes I would hear things from the teachers that I'm like, I wouldn't have necessarily done this way. I would have probably done it that way, considering what your student base is, and just a lack of culturally relevant, culturally responsive teaching strategies is something that I have seen, and it honestly doesn't necessarily tie into race at all. However, it does tie into cultural awareness, social awareness, having that training, having that background, being able to make those genuine connections with your students, and the responsibility of us to really make sure that we are training, giving pre-service training to teachers that can go into districts and like accurately represent and culturally identify with the students that they're serving. There's a lot of research about obviously culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy that supports students and instructors really sharing a cultural understanding. So I think that's one small solution to a gigantic problem, but it could go a long way. Just training, culturally relevant, training for culturally relevant pedagogy can go a long way.
Well, that certainly is a very appropriate suggestion, one that I will take to heart myself. And we have another question from James, who said he's a big fan, and he said, did you ever notice that allowing students to express themselves more creatively helped them to also improve their grades on more traditional assessments?
Absolutely, 100%. And now me being a scientist, I am going to say I've never done any formal studies or collected any formal metrics around this. So, you know, take it as you will. But I have seen students less complaints of test anxiety when students know in their heads that this exam is coupled with a creative assignment. I don't know what the psychology is behind this, but I feel like students do feel less of that suffocating, that restrictive energy when they know, okay, I am going to have to answer these multiple choice questions or these whatever questions in this exam, but I'm also going to be able to do things my way over here, and I can really let Professor Baxter know that I know what I'm talking about, right? Like, I'm going to have this chance to really show in my own way what my value is and what my worth is. So coupling them together really helps. If it were up to me, I would get rid of like the traditional testing methods, like the standardized testing and multiple choice, but I do believe in metrics. So, and I'm sure many of you have good suggestions on how to accommodate for emphasizing more creative work, but for now, I just couple them together. I do both.
Well, there certainly is a challenge for scientists. We're not usually known to be the artsy, craftsy type, but what a challenge.
Yeah.
Another question that sort of looks towards your future. So you have worn so many hats, Raven. I'm more than impressed. Now looking towards the future as you're getting ready to finish your PhD in science education, what's your dream job? What are you excited about? What's down the road?
You know what? I 100% would love an opportunity to continue building community in science, but more so bringing in people from outside of the discipline, inside, and making them a part of our world. I would love an opportunity to teach formally at an institution, but I also do see myself being a consultant and using my knowledge of practice and just the things that I've learned along the way, including my doctorate, being able to use all of these things that I've learned and earned to help institutions improve their pedagogy. Would love to be a consultant for biology departments and give actual training to professors at colleges and universities and training them in culturally responsive pedagogy, and also like establishing science communication programs at different colleges and universities so that we can not only graduate scientists, but graduate scientists who can share their science with not just the science community, but also the entire world. And obviously, if you follow me on social media, you would know that I have a personality. So I would love to just be present in the media as a relatable figure for young people who are interested in science and maybe are looking for just someone who they can relate to, whether that's the style of clothes I wear or the way I talk or where I come from, my story, what I'm excited about. I would just love to continue providing the much needed representation in STEM in the media.
There certainly is lots of room for that, and it's not so much a question as a shout out, and that's that you're such an amazing ambassador for science, and you bet OCC will keep up with you. And one day when we find money in the budget for culturally aware pedagogy, we'll be giving you a call. Now, one last question, and this is something that you can likely relate to. We have a lot of students who come to OCC not sure whether they belong, they're discouraged, maybe they tried to go somewhere else first. What advice would you give to that student who's discouraged about their journey in college and specifically their science grades? Or maybe they've had to switch gears or switch schools to continue their education. If you could sit down with them over coffee, what would you tell them?
That's, I've done this as another one of my hats, right? I worked as an academic advisor at Buffalo State, and I was the freshman advisor at Buff State for all STEM majors. So anybody who was a STEM major, they were sitting in my office. We were chatting about their academic journey, the ups, downs, the all arounds, as you know, that can happen during a person's first year at any institution, whether it's their freshman year or they've transferred and they're now first year sophomore. It can be hard. And I get that. I think that one of the best pieces of advice I've been able to give any of my students is that we are all humans. Like, I think that when people often get into those spaces where they don't feel like they're enough, it's often coming from a place where they're comparing themselves to other people, or they are putting themselves under this notion that so-and-so who, maybe has more privilege and power is going to judge them because they've not been able to achieve this, or that nobody's going to give them an opportunity or see them as worthy because they weren't able to do this. And I always sit down with a student and I'll say, you know what? The only difference between you and I is that really, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, but ultimately we're all just humans that entered in our life cycle at different points in time. There are people who were born before you who really should be reaching out to you to help support you in your journey. Make sure you're accessing these offices. Make sure that you are reaching out to your professors when you need help and not being ashamed of not succeeding and being able to say, like, I failed, can I have a little help, and not like hiding underneath the covers and underneath the sand. It's just a matter of bringing people back to the reality that we all have voices, we all matter. We're all humans, we're allowed to mess up. No one's supposed to be perfect here. And if we expected you to be perfect, like, you wouldn't need to be here, because you wouldn't need to be in school. Like, this is literally your place to mess up and grow from your mistakes. So yeah, and I of course tell them everything I told you guys today about me failing out of college and literally flip-flopping about, and how any student that's been in my office, we probably share a lot more in common than they think. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for those words. Certainly allowing students to see that we too are human, and sharing some of our not failures, but maybe lesser successes, I think goes a very long way. Well, Raven, I want to thank you so much on behalf of the entire institution for sharing your day with us today. And we'll be following you along on social media to see where life takes you next.
Thank you for having me. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I'm especially glad that you could join us, Elizabeth.
I'm happy to be here. Now, thank you again, Raven. For those of you watching, please join us again on April 3rd at 12:30, and we're going to hear from current Syracuse University biology graduate students, and they will be sharing some of their successes and challenges of graduate school and how they ended up in biology in the first place. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.